I think we all know what this means, and most of us know what this means. But in case you don't, this is a Mercedes-Benz, and it is part of their AMG performance division. What does AMG stand for? Achtung Motor Gesundheit, or something like that. But anyway, this belongs to a 2024 GLB 35, which is their compact sport utility. Kind of like the Black Forester, if you're into your German geography. And it's also very, very Mercedes, and yet it competes in a class of luxury compact utilities that just about every manufacturer has these days. So how does it stack up? Well, stay with us, and I'll tell you all about it. Ain't no 4Matic like a turbo 4Matic. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. This Mercedes-Benz AMG has a 2-liter turbocharged engine that puts out 302 horsepower. Quite a bit for such a small vehicle that weighs, according to Mercedes-Benz, just under 4,000 pounds, but I think it actually weighs exactly 4,000 pounds. Why do I base it on? Nothing, but anyway. But look at the size of the wheelbase on this compact sport utility. It's 111 inches from axle to axle. So what does that do for us? Well, if you look at this thing, you can tell something right off the bat. The squared off back that is so similar to other compact sports utilities helps increase the cargo room, but if you'll see how far back that rear wheel is, it also increases the rear passenger room. So despite the fact that this is a compact, you have a lot of room in it. And that's one of the best things about this class of vehicle. It also being a luxury vehicle, because that's, let's face it, that's what Mercedes does. It has all the amenities you'll get on some of the big boys, and yet it'll fit in your garage, and it'll be relatively decent gas mileage, although not as much as some of the competition. But it's also, interestingly enough, a very mild hybrid. There is a hybrid system on board that's used for a few things. And being a turbocharged inline 4, I believe the hybrid system actually helps to smooth out low-end acceleration, because that's the problem you have with turbocharged engines, especially those of small displacement, is they don't make a whole lot of power down low. But the hybrid system can help enhance that a little bit, make it better. So anyway, what we need to do is start at the beginning, and at the beginning of an AMG is performance-oriented stuff on your engine, on your chassis, on your brakes. Every aspect of the car is tweaked a bit to give you more performance. So before we go anyplace else, let's peek under the bonnet and see what it's got. Oh boy, have you ever had one of those days when all the machines are conspiring against you? Yeah, I bet you have. Well, here we have under the bonnet of our GLB 35 is our 2-liter turbocharged inline 4-cylinder engine. Now, as is most common practice, I would say, and kind of unusual in a way for Mercedes-Benz, because they like, generally speaking, to put their engine longitudinal, like so. But this is a transverse mounted inline 4-cylinder engine, and the exhaust part of this equation is up front, and the intake part is in the back. So what that means is here is our turbocharging right here, right down in there. Here we have under this, don't touch that! This is, in fact, there's our turbocharger down there. And then it goes into an impeller, which then compresses the air, and the air then goes into a system that drops down and goes through an intercooling process, and then it comes back up. And here, by the way, is our intake for the whole shebang right here. And what happens is it goes underneath here and comes into the intake section where it is, since it's been compressed, it increases our horsepower to a whopping 302. Roughly, I think about 5,000 to 6,000 RPM. I don't have my information with me because it's somewhere else. But the torque, if I recall, is about 295 foot-pounds. And unlike most turbocharged inline fours, it doesn't have a super strong basement. It's actually a little bit higher up. I think 3,000 to 4,000 RPM is where it starts to peak, and it peaks for about 1,500 RPM. So it's kind of a thoroughbred. I think that's all part of the tuning to get all that horsepower out of just 2 liters, which is very impressive. But over to our right side here, here's our air box underneath here. So this is where the process all starts, with the air coming in there. Ultimately getting compressed by the turbocharging system, intercooled through a intercooler that's way down below the radiator down there, and then it comes all the way around here to our fuel injection system. Our cylinders are 1, 2, 3, 4, right there. So it's kind of compact, but then again, there's so much going on here that it's pretty much packed under this bonnet. And off to the right here, we have what I believe to be quite a bit of electricity. It's actually a very mild hybrid, but there is a hybrid system to help with primarily, I believe, with low RPM operation. Because as I mentioned before, that's where these turbochargers on these 4-cylinder engines tend not to be able to do much for you at the very basement, just off idle. It takes a little bit of time, even for these incredibly advanced ones with dual vanes and all kinds of different adjustments that allow it to spin differently at different RPMs. Even with that in place, you could really feel an improvement when you have a slight electric assistance, because that helps that very basement type of horsepower and torque delivery is really enhanced by that. Now, what else do we have under this very interesting bonnet? Well, look at here. This is a reinforcement that goes from both of the spring towers, kind of binds them together. And that is, the purpose of that is overall to increase chassis rigidity and just general feel of the vehicle. It not only helps with handling, especially extreme handling, but it also helps in ride quality and just the general feeling of solidarity that Mercedes is famous for. And this car absolutely has it. It feels a lot, to me anyway, it feels a lot more substantial than its 4,000 pounds. And not to say that it's a lumbering beast, but it just feels like a very solid piece, as Mercedes pretty much always does. So there you have it. There's our engine compartment. I believe our regular battery, our primary 12-volt battery, is here. As far as exactly how they plumb the hybrid system into all this, I am not sure. There is what appears to be a battery also under the floor of the cargo area in the back. And it's not very big, but like I said, this is a mild hybrid situation. So there's your 302 horsepower, all in German engineering prowess for your entertainment pleasure. Is it economical as well? Yeah, for that, considering the power output, yeah, it does well. And now we move on. Gee, I think looking at this, I'm not positive, but I think we're looking at 255/40 ZR20 XL Continental Contact 6 tires. 20-inch wheels on this thing, 20-inch AMG wheels. And you can also see it peeking underneath there, and a big, massive AMG piston caliper. Dual piston or 3 piston? I can't really tell from here. It looks like it might even be 3. I think it's just 2. But look at the size of the brake rotor on this thing. It is a drilled rotor like the race cars have. And it is a really substantial brake, front brake on this thing in AMG typical fashion. When you consider that this thing only weighs about 4,000 pounds, it has tremendously good brakes on it, which you can't get too much braking as far as I'm concerned. Now these tires are interesting because As near as I can tell, these are like summer tires. They do not look like, I don't see an MS indication on it, so it's not an all-season tire. And being the fact that this vehicle has no spare tire and has no flat repair kit as far as I'm concerned, maybe the ZR, it could be a speed rating. I can't remember how they do these things now because they change them every once in a while. It may be a run flat tire. I have to check on that because most manufacturers have different ways, different symbols that they use to indicate it's a run flat tire. Something interesting, the maximum inflation pressure of these tires is 51 PSI. Wow. I mean, we're talking bicycle territory. That's pretty incredible. Now, as mentioned before, we have a 111-inch wheelbase, which you can really see. I mean, the thing about this is it's designed, it has an off-road mode, so it is designed sort of as a trail type vehicle, like a, oh, I don't know, Subaru Forester, but it doesn't have a lot of ground clearance, saying to me that it is obviously more of a road-based high performance type of situation. And that wheelbase being so long and the ground clearance being so low, you don't have a very good ramp breakover. So if you do decide to meander off-road with it, you have to be careful. You have to really pick your path very carefully lest you bang up something underneath. Because this is much more of a Autobahn type. Let's put it that way. It is tuned for the Autobahn with the AMG package. Now let's have a look in our beautiful cargo area, because I was poking around here a little while ago and it's lovely. Whee! If I recall, with the rear seats deployed as they are, it's about 24, 25 feet. Like I said, I don't have all my stuff, my data with me, but I'll put it on the bottom of the screen for you. And I think it expands to about 57 cubic feet when the seats are folded. Incidentally, the seats are, looks like 40, 40, 20 increments. You have a little narrow part in the middle there, and then the outboard seats, which they can fold forward. So you can reconfigure depending on your cargo and passenger needs on the day. It's very nicely furnished back here. Your owner's manual, which is I found to be useless, is right here. I just wanted to reset the trip odometers. That's so hard. Even the car, I used the audio system, and even the car couldn't tell me how to do that. It had no idea how to do it, so go figure. Underneath here we have spareless. There is no spare. Near as I can tell, there's absolutely no flat repair kit of any kind. So what you have is, this is the battery I mentioned earlier that I think may be part of your hybrid system, possibly. It just has that look on it, and it's definitely a battery of some sort. It has a plus and a minus on it. That may be the regular battery. Hell, I don't know. I mean, these people with their Mercedes, they go their way pretty much. Here we have, among other things, get this out of the way. Well, there it is. It was hidden from me. So you do have a flat repair kit. There it is. Right there, right there. So you do have a motility kit, which will help you if you do have a flat that did not completely compromise your tire. So that's good to see. You also have this beautiful, it's like carefully machined recovery hook and or tow hook if you do have to have the vehicle towed in for any reason. You just screw that in the front and they'll put a cable on it and pull you in, so you're fine. So I'm glad I looked underneath there and found that, because I figured it probably had a motility kit, because I didn't see any absolute, for sure, indications on those tires that they were run flats. Thank God they're not. I don't like run flats. But they are high performance tires for the summertime, very definitely. The liftover height is just about knee level, so it's a nice compromise between up and down, depending on what kind of parcel that you're trying to load in the back of this car. That aids the overall versatility. And as you can see, it's a nice big opening, and it actually has, for a compact, it has pretty good room. It's not as roomy as a lot of the competition, that's for sure. But I think one of the reasons for that is it's really skewed towards having a nice roomy back seat, which we will examine in its entirety later on. But overall, It's a real interesting vehicle in how they did it geometrically. If you were to take the overall size and overall height and the general silhouette of this vehicle, it's very similar to a lot of other vehicles, but the similarity ends there because it's got that long wheelbase, and so much of the architecture is devoted toward having a roomy rear seat. So if you have passengers that you regularly haul, they'll appreciate your thoughtfulness if you get something like this with that 111-inch wheelbase. Cool? Cool. Let's move on. Oh my goodness, gosh, the air conditioning is blowing. Anyway, it's quieting down now as we equilibrate the temperatures. But here is our instrument cluster on our GLB 35. And the thing about it that's so Mercedes is the fact that I could probably spend several hours just going through all these menus and everything else to show you where everything is, because they have one of the most complex systems out there. I'm not saying it's bad complex. Let's just say it's okay for those that really like to mess with a whole lot of menus. But for those who like things to be really easy to find and super intuitive, you need to consider a different vehicle, because this one is pretty complicated. And I do a lot of cars, and when it takes me a long time to figure out how to do stuff, I'll give you a perfect example. Right in front of you see from the start 2.4 miles per gallon, 0 miles, 0, etc., etc. That is all based on just starting the car a few seconds ago, right? So if I go down here, this says from reset. I'm assuming that I don't know this, but I'm assuming that's from when the last time the car was fully refueled. Now, I tried to find a regular trip odometer and how to reset it for probably a half hour. I tried to use the onboard menu system to access the owner's manual. They had nothing on the trip odometer. Then I used the print version. There was nothing about the trip odometer in there that I could find. I don't know where they put it, but it certainly wasn't in the index under trip odometer, or for that matter, under odometer. So it's one of the things I find a little vexing about how Mercedes does things, because these are not the most intuitive. And what's the word? I'm looking for the word that describes it, and it's not intuitive, because that's exactly the opposite of the way it is. Confusing? I'll just say complex, because it takes a long time to get up to speed with everything. But what's on the good side here? Well, one of the nice things we have is here's our center display. Is got all these things for you. There we go, 244 miles. I guess that's the trip meter since reset. And our total mileage is 3,076 miles, I think. But again, there's nothing that necessarily does that. Now look at here. I give it the gas, and look, there's activity. There's activity in the middle there. That's horsepower on the left, or excuse me, on the right side, and foot-pounds of torque on the left side, in case you have a burning need to know this while you're driving, which you may. I mean, I don't know what your agenda is. But here's a setup menu right here where you can basically adjust the AMG dynamic system, which is part of the overall mapping in terms of your transmission and your engine response and everything else. We do have multiple drive modes, which I'll get to in a minute. But we also have, for example, the shock absorber right there is adjusted to the comfort setting right now, because if you look over here, next to our quadrant for our transmission, C denotes I am presently at the comfort setting. Now, if I change that, if I want to go dynamic here, I can go do this, and that will go to, here we go, Sport and Sport Plus. And again, these different parameters are all adjustable. And when it says dynamic, that usually means it will change depending on the driving conditions and what you're doing to the car and how the car interprets your inputs. Very sophisticated, if you're into that kind of things. Some might argue that it's largely completely unnecessary, but there you go. Now, the individual mode here, I with a star, is great. Probably the best one of all, because it lets you adjust I have the suspension on comfort. I want to switch this to basic in terms of the AMG dynamics. And we have sport, dynamic, moderate, reduced, all these different settings for your engine response. We're going to leave it at, I think moderate's good. So there you go. That's that particular mode. But we do have multiple drives. Here's our snow setting. And this incident is slippery. Well, that covers a lot of different ground, doesn't it? Could be mud, could be snow, could be Teflon, if you're driving on Teflon, driving around in some big frying pan. And Sport Plus is where you really release all the ponies and all that kind of stuff. Now, I mention all this and I show all this now because you also have right here in your thumb location on the steering wheel, you have the ability to turn this dial, or excuse me, do that. Here's a little paddle on here to adjust things. So right now, if I want to turn off the traction control, I hit that, and that puts us in the sport handling mode and turns off the traction control. Why does it do that? I don't know. Then we can go through our various advanced or, well, what I just did in the particular sporting mode here, you can fine tune that using this paddle as well. I don't know how you move up and down that, but anyway, that's there for your thumb to enjoy. On the right side, what do we have here? Well, here's another. This is probably the easiest way to adjust your driving mode is right here. So if you're driving like this, you can use your thumb. Again, this is a thumb. This is, by the way, GLB. B stands for big old thumb. If you have a big old thumb, it's the Mercedes for you. But there we go. There's how we can drive our various drive modes right there. Attack them. We'll leave it on comfort. So this is just one little aspect of this car that is very, very complicated. Everything's complicated on this car as far as your interaction and your interface with all the electronics. It has so many electronics to choose from and so many things to pick from. And one of the main things they use to navigate through these menus is on both sides. This is just part of a plastic that, as you can see, when I do this, it's doing stuff there. You can use a thumb there. It's all about thumbs, I'm telling you. This is just hard plastic, and it is really, it's not, you don't have any kind of a tactile back impression. I need to turn my traction control back on. There we go. Wait a minute. Why is it remaining off? Hang on. Well, apparently it's just going to stay off, and there's nothing I can do about it. I'm having a good old time here trying to figure out how to. Oh boy. I'll get back to that. When you're far away, I'll try to fix that. But these plastic things are not as easy to navigate, I find, as most that have a more tactile feel. For example, there's a lot that have like a rolling wheel with a thumb indent on it that's much easier to turn and go up and down. But this is the way Mercedes likes to do this stuff, and it's the same exact thing with the cruise controls right here. And we do, of course, have adaptive cruise control. And depending on whether or not you want lane tracing and that kind of thing, you actually have to go into the main menu for that, as I recall, which is, oh boy, we'll go here, and yeah, I see this. Where do I hit? Okay, thank you. Do not leave people or animals in the vehicle. I'm not going anywhere. To prevent, tap here. Okay, I'm tapping there. Now, all settings, there we go. Driving, that's what I'm looking for. Active distance assist distronic. Yes, we have that on. Now here's our active steering assist. I have turned it off for now, but that's what you would put on should you desire to do some lane tracing. In other words, have the car navigate your lane position and try to keep it in the center of the lane. As you will see when we drive the car, it's like what everybody else has, just a different name for it. Distronic is interesting. You can set this to, like I said, there are a billion different settings for this car. You can adopt it so that it will literally adjust the cruise control to the speed limit that it detects through its navigation system. You can do route-based speed adaptation, which I have no idea. I guess it looks at the map, sees curves, and slows you down. Go figure that one out, because that's again another tool you can use if you like lots and lots of tools to use. All right, so we've gone over this, we've gone all that, and here's our distance in our adaptive cruise control adjustment right there. Like I said, the steering, you have to go through the main menu. There's probably a shortcut that I don't know about. It happens all the time. Resistance, resume, cancel. It's all here, but again, there's no real tactile, and if you just rub against it, it starts doing all kinds of things. It's a very, very light touch on this steering wheel, because you can be changing things without even realizing it if you're not careful. But again, that's just the way Mercedes likes to do this. So let's move on, because I have to be careful, because I could just get lost in all the stuff, because there is so much stuff. Now we'll go to our, this is worth seeing, our navigation system. As you can see, we have a long landscape mode here in 3D. It is very, very clear. It's a really fine map, and if you want to, by the way, over here, God, I didn't show you this earlier, and I should have. Let's see here. That's not what I want to do. I've forgotten where it is. Okay, we don't want that. There we go. We can actually adjust the center screen to do all kinds of different things, and there are different themes you can pick from here as far as what you want to do in terms of your instrument cluster. And let's see, do we have to go through all this? Do we have to go through all this? Vehicle, that's us. Open, close, dynamic select, and all this stuff. Well, we've been through that. That's not where it is. There seemed to be, and I've already forgotten it, and I've been driving this car for a week, exactly where. No, some of you said, this guy is so pathetic. Well, yeah, that's true. Guilty as charged. But I don't get along with a lot of their way of doing things at Mercedes. I just have to be real honest about that. But there is a way to access, let's see, map settings. No, I don't want to do all that. We'll go back. I wanted to show you the different themes, and I've forgotten how to do that now. Let's do that. There we go. I knew it was on here somewhere. But this is fun. This is fun stuff. Now, I have it on Classic. We can go to Sport. Woo! Look at that. That's a tachometer. Woo! Woo! Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, or we can go back here and go to Super Sport. Look at that. Look at that right there. Look at that. That's just crazy right there. You have a tachometer for each eye. Woo! Woohoo! God, crazy, huh? Uh-huh. And then Sport, Classic, Understated. Oh, yeah. Oh, look at that. Very understated. There's your tachometer, and look, it only illuminates the part of the tachometer that you're immediately looking at. With the same thing with the speedometer over there. I like that one. That's a fun one. Then we have navigation, which will put our whole map up here for us, and you still have your speedometer up here, fuel down here, power and charge down here. That is for your very minimalist hybrid system, which is an interesting system, to be sure, because it doesn't do a whole lot of anything, but it does help at certain circumstances. I went over that with the engine, so you're already experts on that. Now here's assistance. If you have any of your assistance systems on, like for example, your Distronic adaptive cruise control, there you go. It's right there. and it will tell you many things. And over here, this is a nice little thing. I think that's telling you what your blind spot warning is doing, I guess. Off-road. Would I actually take this thing off-road? Probably not. But look, we have an inclinometer to tell you the how high you're tilting. Then we have a compass. Then we have a side-to-side. This is the most valuable thing here, as far as telling you how much you're leaning off to the edge and you're about to plummet into the abyss. And you don't want to plummet into the abyss if you're going to ignore it, or not ignore it, avoid it. That's what I'm trying to say. All right. And finally, we have service. What's that? Oh, this will tell you where you're at in terms of when you've had your car serviced. Isn't that great? Our engine oil level is almost at max. Wow. Has someone been adding? I don't know. So anyway, that's all those. And I will go back to my favorite, which is classic. There we go. And there you go. So I'm glad I remembered to do that. It's very entertaining. Climate control. All right here. This is a much more normal and intuitive compared with so much of the operating systems on this car. But this is super easy to understand. There's your automatic setting. This is your little thermostat, and you can actually sync both of these. You have two zones, the left zone and the right zone, or also known as the driver and passenger zones. And you can adjust the temperature for each separately or one together. And then you have all these other menus and stuff you can, the stuff you need, like when you need to do some defrosting and all that. It's all readily to hand right there for you. We drop down, and what do we have here? Oh, camera shadow. Sorry about that. Here's my phone charging happily in the charging section with our Q charger. Then we have a USB-C port right there. Here we have cup holders that do, look at that. How cool is that? Woo! Yeah, that's sophisticated. That's very Mercedes-Benz right there when you got that kind of sophistication. Here's the dynamic switch I was using earlier. Here, ever seen anything close to the radio? Well, here it is. Here's your volume control knob. And as for tuning, you got to do most of that on the main screen. There are no knobs anywhere, and you got to just fight your way through it to figure it out. I'm still learning. Week later, still learning. Here we have our cameras. Now look at all the camera options we have. Drive forward to search for a parking spot. Well, we don't want to do that. But here is directly in front of the car and directly overhead. There's my dog. He's sleeping right there. He's tired. He's always tired these days. He's running around all the time in this weather. All the time. Here we have side to side. And there he is. Oh, he knew I was talking about him. See, there he is. And behind us, this is kind of a real useful one. This is just off towards the rear of the car. You can see the rear wheels there, and that's very convenient. So you have all these excellent choices. And that's behind us, of course. So we have a very good camera system, and unlike most of the stuff on this car, very easy to access. Just a button right there. We do that, and it stays on. All right, well, let's try go back here. That won't work. That won't work. So you got to go all the way up here and do that. Oh, that did work. Okay. So that's that section. Here is a place to put whatever. Here we have a very nice deep console in there. There's stuff in there right now. USB-C. And this is, what the heck is this? Well, there's two USB-Cs. And they've plugged in, for my convenience that I don't need, an interface to a USB-A. And I think maybe that probably comes with the car, I would think. Because you need to have both. If you're going to use USB devices, odds are one of them is going to be a USB-A, even though USB-C has been around for a long time now. Oh, the engine just quit. Something stopped. I have no air conditioning anymore, but everything else is lit up. Very nice, deep, commodious glove box here, which is great. Got a little place up here. You probably put the owner's manual is actually in the back of the car by the liftgate area, but I think you could easily put it on that little shelf right there. But that's very useful and very roomy right there. I like it. I like it a lot. I'm going to see if I can fire this thing back up. Yep, there we go. Yes, hi, how are you? Okay, now this material here is called, let's see, what do we call that? Comfort and convenience. Looking. Paint, upholstery trim. There we go. Black MB Tex microfiber with red stitching. Well, here's your microfiber right here, very soft. And here is your MB Tech, which is a synthetic textile material. And as you can see, we have good side bolsters. This is probably part of the whole AMG package in terms of having all this excellent support. And this is, like I say, this is a real nice combination. Now, do we have heated and cooled seats? I think we do. Let's see what happens here. I go to this. Don't see anything ready to hand. If I go over here, here, by the way, our seat adjustments, which is very common on Mercedes, are on the door instead of down here. This is very, very convenient. It just takes you a little while to get used to it being there, but once you know it's there, you'll never want to go back because it's extremely convenient for fine-tuning your adjustments. Here's your memory right here where you can put in a seat memory. If you have like 3 different drivers that drive the car regularly, that's very, very convenient. And here's our heated seats. We do not have ventilated seats, and I'm not surprised because I note by looking at this this excellent passenger seat here with our microfiber and our MB Tech that there's no perforations in there anywhere. So if you want your backside to be ventilated, not on this vehicle, but there's a spot for it right here. So I'm sure some other option package you will have that available to you. Okay, shall we go in the back? I think we should. I think it's time. Like I said, I could spend an hour, and I've already spent too long, but I could spend an hour up here pointing out all the mess that most of which I can't even figure out. Hello, boy. Hang on there. Hang on. There we go. He's destroyed. He's destroyed that tire. That little toy. Let's see. This is about 88 degrees when the opening. Sorry it's so dirty, but hey. Now here is the feature. Every vehicle has a feature that is just, all right, the windows go all the way down. Thank you for that. The feature is room. This has a very, I was talking about at the beginning, we have a long 111-inch wheelbase, I believe it is. Well, this is fantastic for the rear passengers. It compromises a little bit on your cargo room, but take a look at this. Plus, you got your panorama right there. So you have I can just sit here like a dainty person. I mean, the room is fantastic. And I got this seat back a bit. So if you're going to be regularly hauling passengers, they'll love this thing. I mean, they'll be very happy back here. You have your vents. Now, I don't right off. Oh, there it is. Ha! Oh, boy. Look at here. We got not one, but two USB-Cs and a 110 volter. 115. Well, who puts 150? We're 120. This is the United States. But anyway, you can certainly plug something in there to charge some of your devices if you have that kind of a AC interface. Our dome lights, which are also known as map lights when they're in individual locations like this, are located here instead of here because there's glass here. And the seats have an excellent rear rake to them. They're very, very comfortable. They're flat like all back seats tend to be, but there's still a little bit of decent lower back support. But it's room, and more room. And here we will open. Here's our cup holder. Look at that. I mean, they have to be cool because they're Mercedes. Look at that, how that deploys. Isn't that something? Look at that. That's great. This is a very high armrest, but I like it. I think it's good. Some people will find it excessively high, but I think those people are few and far in between. Overall, it's a pretty decent height. But look at all this room you got. I'm telling you right now, the spaciousness is the thing with this car. So there we go. That's our interior for the most part. The number one feature you'll find is, in fact, the room in the back seat, I think, is the most of all the qualities that this car has, and it has several. This is by far the biggest, is how much rear seat room you have for a compact SUV. And that's about the end of that. As you can see, you have a day's worth of work ahead of you if you are to purchase this vehicle and want to fine-tune all the adjustments you can make. It'll take you a while. But it'll be worth it in the long run, because then you'll have everything, you'll probably understand how everything works on the car, and you'll be able to make all these fine adjustments. And again, so much depends on the exact option packages you have with Mercedes-Benz as to what different things you'll have. That's where you can really work with your dealer, and they can probably find you one somewhere in these United States that has all the packages you want for the exact equipment level that you desire. And the one thing I should note that I find very interesting about this vehicle, it's actually built in Mexico. It's a German car built in Mexico. I mean, what is that all about? And then it's called global production. And here, yeah, German content of parts is 10%. Mexican parts is Germany's 15%. Mexico's 10%. No parts from the United States. Now, here's the thing. That's only 25%, right? Where's all the rest of the parts come from? I have no idea. I guess that's just major sources of foreign parts. I'll be damned. Isn't that wild? Transmission's made in Romania. The engine comes from Germany. And final assembly point is in Mexico. But where are all the parts come from? That's just strange. Maybe I'll find that out someday, because they're leaving 75% of the parts content to somewhere that they're not telling you where it comes from. I don't know. That's just strange. But anyway, thank you, GLB 35. Well, look at that. We can see, what do we want to see up front here? I want to see up front. And it's looking behind. Let's do that. That's looking behind. This should be looking up front. There we go. Was I just wrong for a minute there? Small screen, but extremely good camera. You see more and more of that all the time. And I really like the size of the screen. It's also starting to go the way of, like I've been in particular focusing on things like GM vehicles that have, this is all like one big screen basically. But this is close to that, and it's the Mercedes version of that sort of thing. And there is not an off-road mode that I've been able to discuss. I mean, the thing about Mercedes-Benz and their interactions that they have, boy, where's all this traffic coming from, is you could very easily think that you can't do something, you can't do a particular setting or find something, and it turns out it's there. You just don't know where to find it. Something else that's bizarre about this, I really like the column shifter here. I do, very much. But when you're so used to driving 90% of the vehicles out there, it seems like, this is where your windshield wiper stalk is. So you reach just automatically, and it feels like it's thin. It doesn't have a big old clumpy thing like some of the GM trucks do that have a column shifter, if they still do. I'm trying to remember if the last one I messed with had one or not. But it's something you just have to consider. You have to keep your wits about you when you're driving a Mercedes, and eventually you'll get used to it. But if you have any other cars that are non-Mercedes, odds are this is going to be where the windshield wiper stalk is, and you're going to reach up and hit it thinking you're quiet. Jeez, I don't.
This feature is not available in this vehicle.
Yeah, well, I tell you what else is not available in this feature. Somebody to shut the hell up when I tell them to. There's a learning curve. That's what I was looking for earlier. When it comes to the interoperability of the Mercedes animal, there is definitely a learning curve involved. And right now my learning curves involve using the windshield wipers, trying to figure out how to adjust various aspects. And again, like I say, a fair amount of road noise. A lot of road noise, actually. Let's be honest. This particular road is a great road for testing road noise because it seems to be a real beast at generating it in just about any vehicle. In other words, you're going to get the maximum amount of road noise on something like this road right here that I'm on. And they may be repaving it soon, but maybe not. So we'll have to see what happens. I'm still adjusting, like I've mentioned before. I don't know if I did or not. I think I did. But with so many, especially European luxury models, there are so many different adjustments you can do to your steering. Well, not just the steering, I mean primarily your seating position. And it's incredible. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Id. Okay then. What mode are we in? What mode are we in? We are in comfort. Because we could all use more comfort. Now, as you can see, we have an unimproved road situation right here. And it's a good one, a good test for your suspension, especially for a vehicle that is supposed to be able to handle a little bit of unimproved road situation-ness when you're traveling out to your campsite or something like that on fire roads and things like that. Now I have to, oops, I just remembered, there's construction. I can't go that way. Hear that click, snick, snick, snick? That's the shifting. Dual clutch transmissions are like that. They just really get on with the shifting very, very quickly and efficiently. And that's one reason a lot of performance-oriented individuals really like it. And that's why companies like Mercedes likes to put it on a lot of their vehicles. And this is an AMG version, so it's all about the performance. But it's still a very nice, what I would call, not quite totally utilitarian, but extremely versatile type of vehicle, because you can do all kinds of things with it. You can haul passengers comfortably. You can haul a fair amount of cargo. And it should be able to do quite well on most roads, even if the weather is bad. You have a lot of snow and ice, it'll probably do quite well. And the ride quality is real interesting on this car because it's hard for me to describe, but there is a quality that Mercedes-Benzes have in their suspensions that so much of the time the vehicle is amazingly good at absorbing all kinds of pavement irregularities while still delivering a really smooth ride. Mercedes is so good at that. This vehicle falls into that. It's a little firmer than some of their other offerings, but that's not who we should be comparing it to. We should be comparing it to others in the luxury, compact, crossover sport utility class. And I'd say the ride quality is right up there with the best, because again, they are so good at tuning their suspensions. There's no air suspension, but there is some adjustable shock valving, I believe. For example, if I hit the dynamic thing here, well, there's a couple of ways I can do this. I can go to sport. Well, this is actually where I'm, This is, we are now in the sport mode, and so the suspension should be a lot firmer, and it does in fact feel a lot firmer. Let's see here, we'll go back to that. But we are now in the sport mode, and we're going to come around this incredibly tight turn, see if there's any top heaviness. Nah, it's pretty good. It's a taller vehicle than, say, a sedan version running on the same wheelbase, let's say, but it's still very planted, very flat, very controllable. Boy, I tell you, there's a lot of debris on the roadway, and again, this reminds me of a vehicle I just tested. Should I tell you which one it was? No, you'll see it in time because I'll talk about it at the same time. But there's a fair amount of road noise compared to the amount of noise you're getting from the windshield and everything else as far as airflow is concerned and wind noise. And that's because, as I figure it, they're getting so incredibly good with making the glass so much more quiet than it used to be. And so any other aspect of sound intrusion that comes into the car, the glass takes care of that, so it makes everything else sound louder. So while there is a fair amount of road noise, and it's not unreasonable, but it's there, you'll notice it. It's not like the best luxury vehicles in the world, there's no road noise, hardly to speak of. So there's a little more than that level, but you notice it more simply because the rest of the car is so quiet. The engine's very quiet when you're just pooting along here without hard acceleration. It's pretty amazing how far they've come with the glass, and so I think in some cases they need to work a little bit more on the yes, here's our detour. Okay. Woo! Sport mode. Hear that? Ka-ding! That's your it's your DCT, your dual clutch transmission. Really something, huh? It has a lot of get up and go, but my God, 4,000 pounds and 302 horsepower. Not surprising. It's got the oomph. It's got the wherewithal, which is all good. They finally got these. Believe it or not, we have a huge construction thing going on a major thoroughfare, and they decided to take a day or two to actually put up detour signs to let people that don't live here the fact that how they could keep going on their way. And they finally got the detour signs up. It took them forever. I don't know why it took them so long, but adjustment being made. Yeah. Oh well, boy, it's spring loaded. Oh wait, there we go. The one thing about Mercedes that cracks me up, and this is true actually for a lot of the upscale European type cars, is there are so many adjustments you can make to the seating that there's my neighbor. He's not my neighbor. He sold me. He sold the land we have for our. Anyway, he's a great guy, and his daughter's. My God, she's a woman now. Incredible. But the fact of the matter is, we have all this construction going on, and people like me that live here know where all the ins and outs are and the back routes and everything else, but all these other poor people are showing up and they don't have the advantage that we do. So they need signage. They need help. They need to get on their way. And as I mentioned before, the turbocharging technology in these cars is so good from a power delivery standpoint that it's almost like just having a bigger engine. Granted, it still sounds like an inline four-cylinder engine, unless they want to really get serious. I'm sure they could make it sound like anything you want. But see, I'd love to, if I was all powerful, I would actually drop in a conventional 8-speed automatic transmission just to compare the two. Would I like one more than the other? It's hard to fault this from a performance standpoint. They really do get all this 300 horsepower to the ground very, very efficiently. And the 4Matic all-wheel drive system, the previous vehicle I was talking about earlier having some road noise, it had really bad torque steer. And it was primarily a front-wheel drive vehicle. And this comes standard with 4Matic all-wheel drive. But that vehicle is actually a direct competitor with this one. It's a compact sport utility luxury brand. And I'm trying to compare the price. I think the prices with this and with that are almost exactly identical. And this is already, it's got so much, it's got about 70, 80 more horsepower. It's got a lot of features on it. So did the other one. Okay, I'll tell you what it is. It's just not nice for me to be referring to it without telling you what it is. It was a Cadillac XT4. That's what it was. And I had some issues with that Cadillac. Overall, nice vehicle, but this thing does so much better. It's faster, it shifts better, but more than anything else, it doesn't have that awful torque steer. And I even noticed some torque steer when that particular vehicle, you could have it either in all-wheel drive mode or two-wheel drive mode. And two-wheel drive mode is, of course, front-wheel drive on that vehicle. And the power delivery and everything else was such that you just got an awful lot of torque steer. Which reminds me, I meant to crawl underneath and see if the drive shafts were the same length to the front. But anyway, Mercedes tends to, like BMW, they tend to be biased towards rear-wheel drive. If you're only going to have two drive wheels instead of all-wheel drive, it's usually going to be the rear wheels that do the driving, because that's what they like the most from a performance standpoint, and who can argue with it? Will the rains ever cease? No, I don't think so. But the plants like it. Fish like it. A lot of people like it. It's there's a great quote from a Grand Prix motorcycle racer, and he said in response to a get-off he had, as they say, where he was literally high-sided and bucked off the motorcycle. He said, well, the problem was gravity. First there was too little, and then way too much. And you see, that's a metaphor for life right there. That's what that is. I still can't get over the many things. I'm never getting over anything, but I can't get over the fact that there seems to be a lot of road noise from this here Mercedes. I sure notice it. I don't know why. Maybe it's me. Maybe am I becoming more sensitive? No, there's some cars that lately I've had that have just had a lot of road noise, and I still think that it's a direct response by the makers of noise to the quelling of the noise that comes from your glass, because glass is just doing miraculous things these days, in keeping the noise down overall. The engine itself on this GLB 35, why is it 35 when the engine's a 2-liter? I don't understand. I never have understood this German nomenclature. But it's very quiet for the most part. You can hear the exhaust note when you get on it, of course. But as far as the turbocharging, and the turbocharger is interesting because on, I would say, the majority of transverse inline 4-cylinder engines that are turbocharged, the turbocharger is usually back by the firewall of the car. And this one is on the other side. This one's towards the front of the car, so you have the engine in between you and the turbocharger. And I think that may make it a little bit quieter. That and the fact that they have a very well insulated hood to keep noise down. So you really don't hear any spinning up from there. The engine itself is fairly quiet. So you do have exhaust, but that's out there. That's out back. So all in all, it's a very quiet engine. considering what it is, considering it's a turbocharged inline 4. There have been other engines that have been quieter, but once you get it up to speed, it's the thing that always cracks me up about electric cars is they're just like driving a gas car as far as the engine noise from the modern gasoline-powered car is usually not an issue at speed at all, unless you have some kind of exhaust on there that is part of the whole driving experience. Here comes the famous dip that tells me so much. It's a very firm suspension. The shock absorber control is great, and that's, like I say, comfort setting. So this is the lightest of the settings for the shock absorber. I could modify that. I could stiffen that up actually pretty easily. There we go. I don't know what any of this does. I don't know what it does. Well, that's me. That's on me. But then again, there's so much on the Mercedes-Benz interface system that you have to learn. You should actually have to take a class, I think. This thing handles very nicely on bumpy corners. Very, very nicely. It's up in BMW territory. And better than the average, I'd say better than average for this class of vehicle. The luxury compact with a C, sport utility. The luxury and the sport are part of this. Ooh, hello duckies. Last thing I want to do is hit a duck. Waddling around out there, what you waddling? Oh man, I like that. That duck just doesn't give the duck doesn't give a care about what you're doing in your car. You're going to go around him or her. I think that was a her for some reason. I believe that was a female. But the males were around her, they're never far away. And she was just having none of it, of this automotive stuff. I'm beginning to think the number one attribute of this vehicle is driving it fast on curvy roads and smooth pavement. That's where it's most at home and happiest, and it drives a lot like a what are they called? Mercedes-Benzes. Yes, that's it. Does very well in that regard. Woo! Load the suspension, unload the suspension, wear it out. Whee! Steering is very nice too. It's very, very telepathic in terms of letting you know what it's doing. And you start to get towards the limit and the steering starts to lighten up just right to tell you that the front wheels don't have the traction they had earlier in your driving experience. It's starting to slide around a little bit. But this thing, you gotta push it really hard to get to that state. And another thing's refreshing, even though it is a little top heavy in terms of its architecture. Big old greenhouse on this thing, so a lot of your weight is higher up. It does not feel top heavy at all. It feels more like a sedan. So it's got that going for it. I would love to drive a version of this if I could rip out all the electronics and just put in analog, high quality, beautiful analog Mercedes-Benz gauges that are mechanical. And maybe a screen just for the radio and the navigation, and make it a whole different type of interface where you have it's simple. You have a tuning knob and an on-off volume knob, like in the good old days, because those are so easy to deal with while you're driving without ever taking your eyes off the road. Where are we now? What vehicle are we underneath the rear suspension of? Is it a Forester? A RAV4? No! It's our GLB Mercedes 35. Now, this is something that hit me right off the bat. When I got underneath here, I go, well, that's plastic. Yeah, it is. It's actually a cover that is pretty much completely covering. Somewhere underneath here is the metallic part. But it is completely metal, of course, but it does have a plastic shroud over the whole lower control arm. What's that there for? I really don't know, but it does have a part number here that says right, which means, of course, it's the right side, the passenger side of the vehicle, that this particular cover goes on. I've never encountered that before. I've encountered a lot of little shields that are on the bottom here, but this is really different. And what's not different is the basic setup. You got your unibody construction with, which means no frame, right? But you do have a subframe, and that's, hey, I have the device here. There it is. Hang on. There we go. Now, oh, it's not. Come on, device. Well, let me talk about it. There we go. Here is our subframe here that is bolts onto the bottom of the solid unibody. And then the suspension components are then thus bolted to that. Now, as you can see, we have a front and a very stout front control arm right here that is part of another subframe, which this appears to be metal here, and that is aluminum there, which is also affixed to the differential right here. Very interesting, very novel type of construction compared to most of the competition, which is a little more straightforward. But naturally, this being Mercedes, it has to be more intricate and more involved. And here is a better shot right here of our front control arm. Wait a minute, is that what that is? Yes, that is the front that leads to the front link right there. So it's actually, I say front link, it's actually a lateral link. So as far as the front back, I can't see it readily to hand, but this is in fact a very sophisticated rear suspension that has multi-links to it to keep the wheel in place, and it also has a pretty decent amount of travel. Now if you take a good look there, this wheel is almost off the ground but not quite, and this wheel is up in the air, is compressed rather, because it's sitting on a rock. So it has a fair amount of travel to it. Not fantastic, but good, and perfectly in keeping with the rest of the class. If you look here, here's our rear brake caliper mounted this way, which is interesting. And more than anything else, you notice on these AMG Mercedes is the brakes are not only really strong, but they're wonderfully progressive. They're very easy to modulate, which is, I think, fantastic, because there are some performance braking systems that go on cars that can be really kind of grabby, on the grabby side, because they're so strong that you just barely touch them, and all of a sudden, boom, you're being pulled against the seatbelt there. But this is a lot more comfortable, and just overall a perfectly. I put it this way: you want brakes on your car, this is exactly what the kind of brakes you want, because it's a real balance of smooth operation and tremendous strength. They can really slow you down really quickly. Now this is interesting too, because we have this cladding here and over on this side, but still all this is open in here. And the only reason I mention it, it's not like it's in harm's way at all, but there is a fair amount of road noise, and that's where it's coming from, because I'm noticing more and more as we get used to more and more electrics on the road and other cars that just have cladding that runs across the entire lower part of the car. The road noise is so much lower in those vehicles because, more than anything else, they're more aerodynamic. And this is not bad. I mean, you certainly have some good cladding on here and it's not, when I say road noise, it's not excessive, but it's there. You'll notice it. It also offers a degree of protection, but you're not going to be dancing over rocks with this thing. Now this here is your fuel cell, also known as your fuel tank. And this is, apparently it looks like it's got this little, that's part of what's holding it in there. But at the same time, you also have a car approaching. Oh my God, it's the competition. That looks like a RAV4. So if you take a look at all this together, you see good ground clearance and a fair amount of cladding, but you're not going to want to go over boulders or things like that. It's not designed for that. But for all weather comfort or going down like muddy fire roads and things, this car will probably do pretty good. The stock rubber on it is definitely more geared towards performance summertime sort of situation. But you know, you could easily change those out to all seasons, and you'd be in much better shape for that kind of situation. So here we have our aluminum. Here's our drive shafts up in here, going into the front side of the rear wheels. And I can't really tell, but this looks like a big solenoid here, and that is what would engage and disengage the rear axle. So if it starts to slip, the front wheels rather, if they start to slip, then you do have a situation where it'll kick on your rear drivetrain and help speed you on your way. And it's also present and also works even if you don't have a whole lot of slippage. There's so many different sensors that the onboard trip computer looks at now when it decides whether you're going to have front or back drivetrains active. So that is how the rear drivetrain gets activated, and the drive shaft is up in here, but it's very well concealed. It's very well protected. As far as the hybrid electrics, I'm not real sure. Like I say, it's a fairly modest system, so I don't think you have a whole lot of plumbing back here that has anything to do with the hybrid system. And certainly there's no direct hybrid operation of the rear differential and rear drivetrain. It's all done mechanically by being linked to the front drivetrain and the engine. So that's more conventional. Like if you compare it to something like a RAV4, a direct competitor, except actually I'm using the wrong comparison when I say RAV4. It's the Lexus something or other. I can't remember which one it is. It's a UX or one of those, but that's more in keeping with the competition. But if you get the Lexus version of the RAV4, it will have a rear drivetrain that is completely electric in operation. So, and then you have the Tonale from, I believe that's a Fiat. I've tested it, and it's a really interesting one because the rear drivetrain is electric, but it's the primary power mover is the rear drivetrain as opposed to the front. So that's how our Mercedes is put together, and it's as always, Mercedes-Benz always goes their own way and has their own unique engineering solutions. So there you go. Well, lords and ladies, our 2024 AMG GLB 35 4Matic, made by Mercedes-Benz, has a combined fuel economy of 23 miles per gallon, which is pretty good. Roughly what I got, too, over the week I had it. The only bad thing about this car is it's not cheap. The suggested retail price is $59,050, and with options, our final tally came to $68,900. Not an inexpensive car. But then again, it's beautiful, and it's a Mercedes-Benz, and it's small, so you should buy two. It's no Forester. It's a very different vehicle, but yet it kind of provides the same kind of utility. And yet it does so with all this performance that comes from a transverse, not longitudinally, mounted engine. So there you go. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.
Do whatever the tube tells you. You dress like the tube. You eat like the tube. You raise your children like the tube. You even think like the tube. This is mass madness, you maniacs. In God's name, you people are the real thing. We are the illusion.